It was great watching those films. The topic of this evening is around co-productions and collaboration. But firstly, I would like to start with the film that we just saw. And I would like to ask you, why did you choose that film?
Well, I think we chose it first. So it's one of our more current. It is one of our most current films. Okay, so we thought we'd bring something that was produced by our students recently, and also I think we want to demonstrate how international filmmaking is, and our program is. Okay, not to be self-congratulatory, but what I'm really proud of in our program is that 50% of our students come from Canada, Canada and U.S. and 50% come from everywhere else, right? And so we have a kind of a melting pot of ideas going on here, and so we encourage projects to reflect people's not only their culture that they bring to Vancouver, the school, but also to reflect the ideas that they have, the stories they want to tell, right? Our job is to give our students the tools and the latitude to create the characters and tell the stories that they came to the school to tell. And clearly, our students, our director in that particular project and writer, had a story. And what we always talk about, and we were talking about with the students here today, is what are you trying to say? What is this about? And we thought it had a strong theme. Yeah, and it was very affecting. I liked it.
Excellent, thank you. And Bob, I know you've been a mentor to many of these films. Could you tell us a little bit more about the process of how students write and produce these films at the school?
A lot of the mentorship that I did previously in the writing department was on much smaller films, and these, of course, were produced through our film production program. And so that program, there's a lot of production that the students go through the first 6 months of the program, and then when they get to about halfway through the year, they really focus on these projects, which we call their final projects. So they will have written screenplays for these earlier in the year, or they can also collaborate with writers from the writing department that we have in the writing program at VFS. And so there's writing instructors that will help them develop the idea and workshop that and make sure that it's something that's achievable within the scope of what we have. And because we're sort of focused more on filmmaking in the film program and not so much the narrative story side of things, the students are getting a lot of rigorous meetings and notes for each of the disciplines that we teach. We focus on production design, cinematography, producing, directing, and post-production. So the students have to submit to a panel, essentially, of instructors for each of those major disciplines, all of their paperwork, and including the assistant director as well. So they'll be submitting all of their paperwork when it comes to permits, to shooting plans, shot lists, storyboards, all of that stuff. And the instructors will be giving them feedback, and they have to reach a green light stage, essentially, where the instructors feel that they're at a stage where they're ready to go out the door, they're ready to shoot, they're not going to hurt themselves or anyone else, and that they've got a good chance at success. So Michael and I are both coming from more of a writer background, so we're trying to get more of that story development done earlier. But it's tough with the one-year program. We're trying to cram so much into it that it's always trying to figure out where all the stuff is going to go. But essentially, that's the process. They can bring in a script from the writing department or outside, or use one they've developed, and then it's about, can they do it technically?
Previously, the film production program, which I also am the head of, right, was run by non-writers. And so about 2 years ago, the school was, to be honest with you, was a little bit concerned about the quality of the writing and the content coming out of the film program. So when I was asked to take over the film program in addition to the writing program, it was challenging because there was I'll be honestly, there was a baked-in culture over there already, which was basically, we're auteurs, we have stories that we want to tell, but we don't want any assistance from the writing program for the most part. And slowly but surely, we've changed that with bringing in instructors from the writing program more, and more exposure to the students from the writing program, and
more writing classes.
And more writing classes we've established, and we're finding, of course, now that the projects are getting a little bit more understandable, dare I say. Again, as Bob said, we come from a writing perspective, and we're really writing. We're very writer positive, if that's a real thing, okay? But it's beginning to pay off.
And is other than the quality of the writing, is it important for you also that the students take into consideration the potential commercial success of the stories or the fit with a specific audience?
You know, yes and no. We're a film school, right? We're not a commercial enterprise. And I always tell students, don't chase trends. Tell the story you want to tell. These are not commercial films. What they are reflections of your abilities, your skills, where you are now, right? It kind of is an indicator where you may be going. But again, I don't really worry about the commercial viability of what we're doing at the school. I worry about, does this reflect the students' ideas? Is the story whole? And can people relate to it? Yeah.
We do through our producing stream, because after 6 months at the program, people decide on 2 of those disciplines that I mentioned to go forward. And through the producing stream, they do have to come up with a distribution plan. The idea is that they will hopefully have some budget left. There's budgets assigned to each of these films. That they'll hopefully have some budget left to send it out to film festivals. The idea for us, and I love that you guys are teaching a sort of an economy attached thing to the film thing here, because I think I agree with Michael. Well, we don't stress so much that the students make these short films viable commercial properties, because the market for short films, especially student short films, is not necessarily very large. But what we try and focus on is, how is this a stepping stone film in your career, right? How is that film going to go out to film festivals and get you into a conversation to maybe make your next project, and sort of giving them that sort of 5 to 10 year perspective of just where they want to go. Less specifically on a commercial sort of economic sort of standpoint, but more so just, thinking about, this isn't the only film you're going to make. What's the next one? What's the next one? How are you going to get to your first feature? What's your pathway, based on the various different pathways that are available?
Yeah, and just building up on that, as you say, yeah, in our film school, like, entrepreneurship is a very important skill set that we like to put a lot of emphasis in. And going beyond these projects, as you were saying, this film is like a stepping stone. How do you see the relationship between filmmaking and entrepreneurship, especially in these days?
Well, it depends how you're defining entrepreneurship. I may be answering this incorrectly, but I've always thought, and I'm writing centric, so I always felt that the screenwriter was the most entrepreneurial part of the process, because, as I like to make the slightly glib comment, I'll have an idea in my shower, and if I'm lucky, 8 months later, 400 people are working, right? And it doesn't get more entrepreneurial than that, to a certain degree, right? So I think filmmaking is entrepreneurial in the sense that it springs from an idea, a simple idea, right? And then it snowballs very quickly into quite a large financial enterprise. It's really interesting. I was telling the students today that a simple sitcom in the U.S., it costs between 2.4, 2.8, 3.5 million for a 22-minute sitcom, right? There's a lot of money involved here, right? And so you times that by 22 episodes, and now you're talking serious dough, right?
When I was teaching previously in the writing department, like I say, our productions were much, much smaller. And so I was sort of always coming at them with the point of view of, trying to teach them how to make a movie that wouldn't cost an arm and a leg. And I always had this one class about budgeting, where I would ask them, well, how much money should you raise for your movie? And everybody's answer right off the bat would be like, well, as much as I can possibly get. But then you ask the question of, well, now you owe somebody $4 million, right? Because you don't have it, so you got to raise it. So now you owe it to somebody. So I think one of the cool things about being a filmmaker right now, especially on the entrepreneurial side of things, is that it's never been cheaper to make a movie. So if you're really smart about it and you focus on, character and you meet talented filmmakers and form a network, you can make a couple of movies on favors and very little money. And if you're thinking about it from an entrepreneurial perspective of the stepping stones and then the pathway, and you're doing that in a smart way, I think, the doors are much wider for young filmmakers to make their own path than ever before. So I think that's something to think about, that a lot of young filmmakers don't, is the economy of it. Not necessarily how they make money, but even just raising money and owing money and all of that.
And we try to impress upon the students that it's not about the equipment. You know, you don't need a $75,000 camera and prime lenses to make a really lovely film these days. You know, what's available in hardware now to students, you know, it's shocking, right? You know, what you can do with the DSLR, right? You know, it's fantastic. So again, you have all these options now to make a film with your friends, you know, a web series to go out and I wish we had that available to us, but for us, my generation, to go out and make a web series, which doesn't exist, by the way, but to make a short film, we couldn't even approach it. Now it's incredible.
And in this line, what can young professionals expect in the industry? Like it's changing a lot, and it's more accessible, but at the same time, there's more competition. So how can young filmmakers like the ones that are joining us tonight can prepare for these new conditions?
Well, I think the film program here is a great way of getting into it. I think, again, and this sounds like being glib again, but there's never been a better time. There's such huge opportunities now. You know, it's a hungry beast out there. All these new platforms, you know, all these new places for the sell product. And again, as a writer, it's the best, because once a script is shot, you know, it's a hungry beast, and you constantly have to replenish the pipeline. And that pipeline starts with scripts, right? And so the industry is looking all over the world. You know, we've been waiting for years. We've been saying how it's a global business, right? But it's only been in the last 5 years that it's really been a global business. It really and truly has. When we go around the world doing these writing seminars or workshops. You know, I mean, we do a lot of traveling on this, you know, from China to India to Mexico to here to Guatemala. We were just in Brazil a couple of months ago. We were on our way to Istanbul, thank you, you know, in 2 weeks, right? And meeting with students and pretty much spreading the gospel of writing and story, because that's where it all begins. So again, it's just been great opportunities now for everyone. It's just fantastic. But it's a global business, and the companies, the Netflixes and the Amazons and Apple TV now, and all these companies who are going to be at Hulu, they're looking for people's point of view and storytelling skills and narratives from all over the world. Mm-hmm. You know,
the other thing I think that's interesting too is, you know, the way that the boundaries between film and television have kind of broken down a little bit, with a lot of interesting work being done. I think it's a really great time for filmmakers to embrace kind of the weirder part of themselves a little bit, and to stand out that way. Because I agree with you. I think there's never been an easier time to make a movie, but that means everybody and their dog are making movies and getting them out there. So I think it's really important to set yourself apart. And we were talking about this morning. I mean, you know, we show up here to Guatemala City and we're blown away. It's so interesting to us. You guys live here every day. It probably seems normal and boring, but I think, you know, embracing where you're from and embracing the interesting parts of your own culture, that it is universal, right? Like, a quirky thing about Guatemala that's very specific to Guatemala will not only be interesting to a wider audience, but also it's going to be relatable, right? Those kind of specific things that are really true to your life, I think, are what make your work universal when it goes out beyond the borders. So I think, again, focusing on making something that's super simple, character-based, kind of weird, finding your own voice, finding your own spin, I think is really important. I was chatting earlier with that gentleman right over there. I'm forgetting your name. I'm sorry. We were chatting about film festivals and how film festivals are having such a great renaissance right now because of this very reason, right? You can throw your work on the internet, but that doesn't mean anybody's going to see it. There's great, you know, possibilities for self-distribution, but going to film festivals now, if you can send your film to a festival, get accepted, go represent your film, meet people there, that's a great way to, you know, make that stepping stone for yourself. And a lot of folks from these companies like Netflix and Hulu, they're all desperately trying to build up a library, you know, before Disney launches their streaming platform and takes all their content off of these platforms. So they've got people there that are looking for content. They're hungry. And not only that, they're hungry for interesting new voices. And so that's the thing. Like I say, be weird, embrace the strange, but don't try and make a mainstream film when you're first starting out, because you're not going to stand out. Make the film that only you can make.
Yeah, and I guess this can tie into the main topic of collaborations and co-productions, because as you say, it's a truly global industry. So how can filmmakers prepare to collaborate on a global scale?
How do you prepare? No. Again, it's get noticed, right? I mean, that's the key thing. You know, I'll digress a little bit for a second. I mean, the number one thing, and I said this earlier to the students who are in our thing here, the number one thing young people have, number one question is, how do I get there, right? You know, how do I get there? But it all starts with either what's on the page or a demonstration to somebody of what it is you can do. I mean, if you're a cinematographer, if that's your goal, if you're a writer, if you're a director, you've got to demonstrate to somebody that you can deliver, right? But I think the number one job of young people is to get something out there, get it on the page, get it on film, right? And take it, as Bob was saying, either self-publish it up on YouTube or somewhere, try to get a little bit of traction, get noticed, right? And the industry is desperately looking for young people. That's the great thing, is that they don't care, and this sounds slightly me being sarcastic, but it's not. The industry doesn't care about what I have to say anymore. My generation, honestly and true, and that's great because my generation had its time, right? You know, when I was 20, 21, right, the older writers on the shows I were on just despised us young people. They just hated us because, again, we were getting the attention. We were getting the heat because the industry is run by young people for the most part. The executives and the people at the studio at the lower level and the middle level are young people, right? And they want to work with young people. They want what young people's ideas are, right? So this is your time. You've just got to figure out a strategy, you know, how you're going to be seen and how you're going to get there. But again, it's not for the faint of heart, but if you persevere and I always tell people you got to want it, right? And you've got to be able to take a punch, and you've got to figure out a workaround around all the people who are blocking you and telling you no, right? And there'll be plenty of people who are going to tell you no. Even the people who love you are going to say, "Why are you doing this?" But it's the people I know an enormous amount of successful people in the industry because I've been in the industry a long time, and they all started out exactly this way. So you got to figure it out by hook or by crook, guys. You know, you got to figure it out. I wish I had the secret formula, right?
Actually, do you guys in Guatemala, does the government support film? Is there like film grants or funding? No. Because I think one of the things that you can do to prepare, just on a purely practical, I mean, if you're getting the chance to make films internationally, you've already done something right. But one of the things you can do to prepare is look into Canada. I know has co-production treaties with a bunch of different countries. I don't know if we have one with Guatemala, but I like Mexico, for example. We have a co-production treaty wherein if you have a project that involves Mexican story components as well as Canadian story components, and you're employing people in both places, you can access money from the Canadian government, and also your production company that you form for that movie can operate both as a production company in Mexico as a Mexican production company and in Vancouver or Canada in large as a Canadian production company. So those kinds of things are also really helpful. A lot of governments are really trying to push this international co-production stuff. So you can look into that. That's a practical thing you could do to prepare yourself for sure.
And you know, it's slightly self-serving for me to say this, but you know, go to another country and make relationships and form. It's a social business. It's a really social business, and so the more of the bigger you can expand your network internationally, right?
The stuff you guys are doing with your students here is amazing.
Yeah,
sending them all around the world.
And
you guys are really preparing your students.
And that's a great way because they're going to meet people, and you know, and you stay in contact and. You know, with social media now, people stay in contact so much better than we did stay in contact. You know, I used to have a Rolodex, you know.
Yeah. And speaking about people going abroad and making new connections and new collaborations, I would like to invite Ines Estarri to come to the stage and tell us about her experience being one of those students that you were mentioning. Welcome. So first and foremost, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about the film that we just saw. What was your approach as a director, and how do you approach your work?
So this was definitely incredibly different to anything I've ever done because usually I've written my own things. And this time, a friend of mine wrote the story, which is what you guys were saying. We're looking for writers, and it was definitely hard because I wanted to stay faithful to the vision the writer had, but at the same time, I knew that I can't have the same idea he has. So I had to let that go and just let it happen and work it the way I knew I could do it right.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the story behind the story? Like, how was the experience making this film with people from UFM that you already knew, but also with people who you've never worked with before?
It was actually a lot of fun, especially I think there's like the sort of like trying to prove yourself. So I felt like very much the UFM people were bringing their all, so were the VFS. So it was the combination of amazing, just great attitude. It was a lot of fun. And especially like the location hunt, looking for locations, because it was something in a country you don't know. So we literally just went like door by door, like saying, hey, can we use your location? How's it going?
It worked.
It worked, yeah. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, especially I think it's the people that make it fun. You have to have a great team to make it entertaining.
And how did you find and promote that great team?
And I think it's self-evident. I think they're like-minded. You know, these 6 students from UFM who came up to the school have the same dreams, hopes, aspirations as the 30-some-odd students we had in the program at that time. You know, so you have a shared idea, which was, how do we get into this business? We want to be filmmakers, right? And so it's a fraternity of creativity.
Also, we forced them all to work on each other's films.
Yeah.
The class, in a class, we max out at 36 people in a class. So this particular class had some spots open, which again worked out really great that
We had
these guys
attrition.
came out.
This class had attrition. We had about 6 dropouts in this class.
Yeah.
So we were going, oh man, how are we going to make the films? We haven't got enough people. And then by magic, we had this
Guatemalan Angels showed up.
These Guatemalan Angels. So we had 6 students to fill that spot. It was fantastic.
The way that it works is even in a class of 36, because of our schedule, and we hope that people have kind of divided up their interests a bit, we really can only make about 6 final projects, sometimes maybe 7, but 6 is kind of the maximum for our resources. So these guys were sort of the keys on their own project. And then we had, how many other ones did we make in your class? 4? Was it 4 total, including you guys?
No, it was 5.
5 including you guys. So we made 5 films. And so what happens is people, based on whether they've chosen directing, or I should have explained this more earlier, sorry. Taking up Inez's time now. Directing, cinematography, production design, post-production, and directing. Based on whatever 2 of those they've chosen, they have to take a key role in at least one, and then secondary roles and other things. So they all work on each other's shows, and for like 5 weeks, you guys just shoot movies.
You worked on other people's films as well.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, sorry.
So they didn't just shoot their film. They crewed the other students' films as well, which forms relationships, right? So, you know, hopefully you guys stay in touch, right? Yeah, that's the best thing. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I think it's a great opportunity to go to another city and not only explore new collaborative opportunities with people, but also like immerse yourself in a new context and attract ideas. As you were saying, like for you, Guatemala seems exciting and new, and for us, like Vancouver is a context that is so vibrant that it also inspires you to go beyond what you thought was possible. And you mentioned something along those lines before, and I would like to ask you, what did this experience mean to you as a professional and as a student? Like going abroad, exposing yourself to these experiences.
Oh, it meant the world to me, actually. I've always been kind of sort of shy and try to like hide a bit more. So this experience really pushed me in front and said, okay, now do it. And it was nerve-wracking, but it was exactly what I needed because it was that push I needed to believe that I can do more stuff than I let myself actually do. And also seeing how people work in different parts of the world and seeing what we have in common, it's actually really inspiring. It makes you want to work more.
Excellent. And what can we expect of Loading Dock? What's happening after this screening? Because I think it was the first time an audience has seen this film.
Yes, it
right?
is.
Yeah.
We're currently still working on a couple of tweaks that we want to fix it because I think it's the issue of like every time you see something, it's like, I would have done this differently, but it's never ending. And then we have a festival route planned. Well, we're planning it out. Yeah.
Excellent. Congratulations and best of wishes with that. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. 2 microphones.
Yes.
Bob and I both want to thank UFM for bringing us down here. This is, for us, it's a great treat because we're making connections and contacts and meeting young people and hearing ideas. And we're going to I guarantee you, we hear a good idea. We'll take it back and try to get somebody interested in it from up there.
You guys aren't the only ones that are growing from your international experiences. Every time we go somewhere, it's always great. And you guys have been so welcoming here at UFM. So thank you very much for having us. And thank you guys for coming to listen to us ramble.
Yeah,
it's
mostly
very nice
ramble.
Of you. Yeah.
It's true. All right, but thank you. All right.
Thank you.